Welcome back to another edition of Political Breakfast. We are so glad that you are here and listening on WABE. Brian Robinson is here. Tharon Johnson is here. Lily Oppenheimer is here. We're all here to say hello to you. Have some interesting things to talk about this week, from the money being raised and the governor's raise and the effort to cut state income taxes here in Georgia. So that's still piquing the interest of a lot of people here. So first, hello. Is everybody wide awake as we tape this? It is the morning after. I'm not going to say a big Super Bowl game. Right. Another Super Bowl that was not at all intriguing, was it?
No, it was so boring. I got a lot of invoicing for my business done during the first half. But what I want to point out is that the Super Bowl winning coach, and very, very early in his career, still in his 30s, is from Roswell. He is a Centennial High School grad. He is my fellow Bulldog, a University of Georgia grad. And he was presented the trophy last night by another Georgia Bulldog, the great Maria Taylor from NBC, who is super cool and I think still lives here in Atlanta. I'm just going to assume she's a WABE listener. Hey, Maria, go Dogs. So, as boring as it was a great night for the University of Georgia and its alumni.
What are your thoughts? Did you have a big Super Bowl party there and it just kind of went, blah?
He better not have. I did not get an invite if he had a Super Bowl party.
No big Super Bowl party. Went to a friend's house. They combined it into a sort of a birthday party. But like B. Rob said, I was very happy to see the Seattle Seahawks win. Shout out to the coach. And Maria Taylor, you're absolutely right. She still does live in Atlanta. I know her husband well. She looked fantastic. She did a great job. And as you know, B-Rob, I think she played volleyball at the University of Georgia. And I remember her. Shout out to my good friend, Brian Harris out of Atlanta, Athens, Georgia.
Good guy.
Brian Harris used to be with Jackson Spall. We played football together.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, Brian Harris used to actually play offensive line. But he's looked pretty good these days. Anyway, he introduced me to a young Maria Taylor. And we were on the south side of Atlanta, and she was doing something with Brian. We've given back to the community. So a lot of Georgia connections there. And yes, Lisa, I am still not over the 2017 loss to the Patriots. And so I was definitely going for the Seahawks.
Exactly.
And, sorry all my Patriots fans out there, but definitely wanted the Seahawks to win.
I do want to say with Maria Taylor, she is also very approachable and very nice. And she's a fellow Grady College grad at UGA. And I'm on the board at Grady College. We honored her a few years back for her early career award or something like that. She got up and gave a speech and talked about growing up in Georgia, being a Georgia Bulldog fan. Her grandmother was a huge Georgia Bulldog fan. And she goes, but my grandmother was not allowed to go to the University of Georgia because she was black.
Yeah.
And here is her granddaughter, not only an alumna of the University of Georgia, but being honored for her greatness by the University of Georgia. And it was really one of the best speeches I've ever seen at that Grady College event. So, huge fan of hers.
Absolutely. That was a great Black History moment there.
Yeah, there we go. Sure. See, Tharon, I do it till Black History Month right here. How about this February, baby?
Well, Lisa, I had to remind him, on our TV show. I said it on Friday, and everybody looked at me like I was a deer. They had a deer in headlights. They looked at me like I was a unicorn. But no, it is Black History Month. Thank you, B-Rob, for spreading a little light there for Black History. But I want to see if you're going to match the same energy what I'm about to say now. So how did you feel about Bad Bunny? And
terrible.
I enjoyed it. I didn't understand anything he was saying, but his bringing his culture to life like that on the Super Bowl stage was phenomenal.
Well, I agree with you, Lisa. Listeners, you know where B. Rob is going to be. He had about 37 seconds of being for the culture, but now he's going to go back and be a Republican. But no, I thought it was very well done. You're right, Lisa. I didn't know any of his songs. I had to go and pull them up, but it's been getting a lot of good responses.
Yeah.
It was getting ripped apart on my X feed last night during the show. Oh. I think we are in very different echo chambers because my team was like, why are we having a halftime show in Spanish, right? I mean, look, even if he was speaking English, it's not my kind of music, right? It's not my thing. And I know the halftime show isn't about 50-year-old white guys. They want a younger demo. I get that. I get where the market is. But God, I thought it was boring. I didn't like it.
So did you watch Kick Rock?
No, I watched Bad Bunny. I kind of forgot about Kid Rock, frankly, until
So
until
did
it was
Kid
too
Rock
late.
actually perform? Because I saw a lot
Yeah.
of things that popped up in my algorithm of showing him using cuss words and
Oh,
being
really?
very, very aggressive. So that's AI, B Rob, or is it true? Like, did he actually perform?
I don't know.
don't
I
remember
didn't see
seeing
it.
Kid
I
Rock.
didn't see it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
hey, can the three of us rule out that Bad Bunny wasn't cussing? We don't know. We don't have any idea what he was saying. Maybe he was being extremely
Come on,
profane.
he just won a Grammy. I'm sure it was it
And he
was
handed it to the
PG.
5-year-old who was
Yeah, it was
abducted, B
PG.
Rob.
I'm
Show
sure
a
it
little
was all
passion.
PG.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, gave it to the little kid that went there with his parents, and you gotta love that now.
Yeah,
Handing him a
beautiful.
Grammy. I mean, you're talking about a transformational moment.
Yeah,
I mean, that was
I didn't know that
fantastic.
backstory. I didn't know that.
Yeah, yeah. I thought it was nice.
Well, I got you for the month of February. I got you all the black and brown issues.
Yes. Yes.
B Rob.
Checked off. This morning, though, we woke up to some fundraising numbers in the Georgia governor's race on the Democratic side specifically. I want to start off and just get your thoughts on that. Jeff Duncan, Michael Thurmond are the first to show how much they've racked up so far.
Yeah. Let me start there because Tharon and I were discussing this on a call before the show a little bit, and I wanted to tell him what I was going to say. I am really shocked at how low the fundraising totals have been throughout the year for the Democratic candidates for governor. We are seeing a tremendous amount of enthusiasm and energy on the Democrat side. They see blood in the water in Georgia after the 26-point win by the Democrats in the Public Service Commission races in November. Yet, we're not seeing that enthusiasm turned into dollars the way that we saw Warnock and Ossoff do it 6 years ago, right? It's not happening. And let me tell you the repercussions of that. Right now, we've seen Keisha Lance Bottoms, whose fundraising has been pretty consistent with the others in the race. They all came in, between $1 million and $1.1 million. It was very consistent throughout. She's not blowing it out of the water, even though she is kind of blowing it out of the water in early polling. We've seen her consistently in the low 40s. I do think that's soft support. I do think that if there was a negative message run against her, particularly about her term in office, having to do with crime, having to do with taxes, having to do with the willingness to do the job, that those numbers would collapse. But these numbers, these fundraising numbers suggest no one's going to have the money to go and tell a negative story about Keisha Lance Bottoms. She's going to get a free ride. And if any one of them who have equal fundraising decide to attack Keisha, they will make their own negatives go up because voters will blame the person going negative if they have an alternative who's kind of being neutral. If it's one-on-one, it's different. Then going negative really is a net positive. So that's a big calculation for all of them. So at this level, with nobody breaking out, you're going to have Duncan, Thurmond, and Estevez all battling to get that second place spot behind Keisha and then hope that the Democratic Party rallies around them. But to some degree, that's going to depend on luck as far as which one of them breaks out of the pack. Because I see them as sort of grouped up together back there. Tharon may disagree. I think Tharon's seen an advantage for Thurmond that I haven't really noticed. But that's the lay of the land. That's what these fundraising numbers mean. They have real-world repercussions that no one's going to be able to go after Keisha until the runoff, and Democrats have to hope it's not too late then.
Lisa, I'm going to break this down on 3 different fronts. So let's start with the pathway to victory for any Democrat. So there's been 5 polls right now that I've been privy to be able to see and what I've heard about. 3 of those 5 polls have been public polls. AJC did a poll. Keisha Lance Bottoms did a poll, and very early in the campaign. Jeff Duncan wasn't in the race, and I don't think Roy was in either. And then also Alicia Cersei did an education poll. So those are the 3 public polls. And then there's 2 internal polls out there that have kind of been rumored about in the internal campaign. So out of all of the 5 polls that we've seen, Keisha Lance Bottoms, strictly more so based on name recognition, is at the top of the list. She's hovering somewhere around, let's just say 40%. In all 5 of these polls, Michael Thurmond is in second place. AJC poll, he was at 11%. I've seen polls, public polls, that show him in the mid to high 20s. So it's clearly a 2-way race right now between Keisha Lance Bottoms and Michael Thurmond. Now, what B-Rob is talking about is the money. It's more of an issue with Jeff Duncan, Jason Estevez, Roy Roman, Derek Jackson, Olu Brown. Those are the other people who are running. All of those people I just mentioned to you are in single digits. So if Thurmond can continue to poll in that second spot and Keisha maintains that 40% number without being hit, without being any positives, negatives, and favorability kind of being mixed in there, we're headed to a runoff in June. Now let's get to the money. So let's just start focus on the top four. B. Rob is right. Keisha Lance Bottoms is now sitting on about $2.2 million. She raised 1.1 this recent quarter. Before that, she raised 1.1. She gave herself $200,000. Jason Estevez has raised roughly about $2.2 million. No loans. He got in the race early on. I think he had about a month, maybe so, about 4 to 5 weeks ahead of start of everyone else. But the second person getting in was Keisha. But the biggest disappointment and the biggest number that everyone is kind of talking about is Jeff Duncan's number, who was only able to raise roughly about $1 million, 1.1. And the reason why that's disappointing, Lisa, is because he in his campaign had us believing that he was going to blow it out the water. I mean, this is a former statewide elected official. This is a guy who said that he could build his coalition. All these folks are going to give him money. But he was only roughly able to raise 1.1. And then you got Michael Thurmond, who raised $725,000. 750, I think, roughly there. He loaned himself $300,000, so he's in that 1 million to 1.1 million mark too. Will Roman raised $250,000, and I think as we tape, I have not seen any numbers from Olu Brown, Derek Jackson. I think Derek Jackson maybe disclosed some numbers. I don't want to say the wrong number. So when you look at that, those top four that I mentioned, Lisa, it's all about what you raised, but also how much money do you have on hand. And Michael Thurmond has $700,000 on hand to go and continue to push his message out throughout the state and metro. But also, if he decides to go on the offense or if he has to be on defense, he's got that money on hand. As we tape, I have not seen on-hand money from the other people. And so what we know about in campaigns, there's always what we call a high burn rate. The third thing I want to unpack is what B. Rob is doing here, right? It's very strategic to our listeners. They want Keisha Lance Bottoms as the Democratic nominee. They, being the Republicans, believes that she has a high enough negatives that they're going to be able to exploit and put millions and millions and millions of dollars behind.
Look at Brian shaking his head over
That's right.
there.
Oh, yeah. That's right.
Yeah, I mean,
that's right.
So I just want our listeners, this is why this is so important, because, Lisa, you ask us all the time, like, what's going on? So I just want to just
This
put
is
it out
what's
there.
going on. This Tharon is right.
But they've said publicly, Lisa, Republicans have said this, that Michael Thurmond is the hardest one to beat. Now, there was a little sugar high there with Jeff Duncan. I mean, it was, a lot of people are obsessed with this sort of apology tour that he's on, telling people that he's, just forget everything I did, forget everything I, voted on, all those conservative bills, abortion ban, eliminating opportunities for people to vote, all that stuff, right? Being a Forsyth County Republican, the fact that he's actually, riding around in the beast with Trump. He wants us to forget all that. But had he posted a big number, Lisa, I'll just say this. I think that Jeff Duncan would have been a problem. So now with him only able to post a 1.1, Thurmond, Estevez, and Keisha there, I can make an argument for all four of those candidates and how they can get into the runoff. But how they spend their money, how they continue to build a winning coalition, we're still waiting on Jason Estevez, who said publicly that he's going to attack Jeff Duncan and Keisha Lance Bottoms. The money is important, but I do think that you will see more come in. And I would say this to B. Rob's point. I think the numbers are being split up. I mean, roughly there's about $10 to $12 million out there that's been kind of split amongst 5 to 6 candidates. But you'll see the money start to increase because I think people are going to start to get more involved. Mm-hmm. But we're not going to have the money that Burt Jones and Raffensperger and Rick Jackson are going to have.
Yeah. Let me also to put that into a broader context. So the Democrats have very little to spend because, it's not just going to be all that money doesn't go to advertising. They have overhead. They got staff to pay. There's going to be some, mail and digital that isn't seen by everybody in the state the way that TV advertising is. And these Democrats are fighting for attention in the same media markets where Republicans are fighting for attention. And so you got Burt Jones, who has raised $9 million, has $10 million of his own put in. You got Rick Jackson saying he'll spend north of $50 million. You've got this Georgians for Integrity group out there that's already spent $13 million. Georgians for Integrity, a group who we don't know is being funded by, has spent more money, this outside group, than all the Democrats in the governor's race combined have raised to put, how jaw-dropping is that as far as telling you the story? So you're going to see a lot of crowd out here where the narrative being told on the biggest stages in Georgia is going to be dominated by these Republican titans in this race. And of course, Raffensperger, we don't know what his total is going to be, but we know he can self-fund, that he can put in millions of dollars. There's going to be all this money being spent on the Republican side, and I haven't even gotten to the Senate race where Brian Kemp is spending money on behalf of Derek Dooley and presumably Buddy Carter, who's worth more than $100 million. He can put in millions more. Mike Collins will have raised millions by then. So, there's going to be a lot of crowd out for Democrats. It's going to be very hard for them to get attention in this atmosphere between now and May 19th.
Real quick, Lisa, to B. Rob's point, that's why name recognition statewide matters. And when you see Keisha Lance Bottoms with her being a former Atlanta mayor, that helps when you do the polling statewide. Michael Thurmond being a former labor commissioner elected multiple times and spending a lot of time in the state. It's reported that he actually went and did over 100 events. But to be fair to everyone involved, if you look at the breakdowns on the disclosure, 96% of Mike Thurmond's money came from Georgia residents. 16,000 contributors to Keisha Lance Bottoms, right? So she's got a very community sort of driven, but a lot of that money is national. A lot of Jeff Duncan's money is national. I think Estevez's number is a confluence between a little bit local and national. So you got to see where the money is coming from. But to B. Rob's point, I believe that the February to April sprint is going to be more important than this sprint we just say for fundraising. But the name ID and who Republicans want you to believe that they want to go against, you will see them having so much money, Lisa. I'm not surprised that you're going to see a group that's going to be funded by Republicans to go over here and try to either prop up Keisha Lance Bottoms or whoever they think is the weakest. And I'm not saying that she's a weak candidate, but I'm saying this is what Republicans are saying. B. Rob just confirmed it. So you'll see them starting to do some meddling in our race and to try to drive the narrative. But Democrats have got to stay strong, and it'll start to materialize here in the next 60 days.
Jeff Duncan, though, has a name recognition, but what are you saying at this point? Are you indicating that he may not have a chance here?
No, I'm not saying that. He's got name recognition as a Republican, right? I mean, let's not forget that. This is a, Forsyth County, used to be a MAGA Trump supporter Republican. Amongst Democratic voters, primary voters, they know the name Keisha Lance Bottoms, Jason Estevez, Michael Thurmond, even Derek Jackson, Rural Roman, Olu Brown. So he needs to buy that time, Lisa. That's what I'm saying. He's got to spend more money and more time around the state being known as a Democrat. But he does have a lot of Republican name recognition. And correct me if I'm wrong here, B. Rob. I've been traveling the state with you, buddy. I've been talking to a lot of your peers. Other than Stacey Abrams, I would say that Jeff Duncan is probably the second most hated now Democrat in the state. If he's not number two, he's definitely probably hovering around.
I was going to ask Brian, what are Republicans saying about Jeff Duncan now? Are they saying anything?
If
anything, yes.
Yeah. Look, Tharon's right that in Republican circles, the contempt for Jeff is at a astronomical level. I mean, certainly the hatred between him and Burt Jones is utterly toxic. And you can see that in the sniping back and forth between the two of them. But, I think that there's something to be said about when you leave a team for the opponent that kind of takes it to a different level, a level that even Stacey Abrams can't compare to. So, yeah, you do hear just groans and eye rolls about Jeff within Republican circles. Certainly he is not going to win any popularity contest over there. I appreciate that Tharon acknowledged he does have a chance at this. I think he's got a chance to get that second slot there in the runoff because they're all grouped up together. I think it's going to be a matter of luck to some degree on who breaks out and gets in that runoff with Keisha. And I think any of the three of them are going to be capable of beating Keisha in a runoff because I think the Democratic establishment will coalesce around that second place winner because they see Keisha as the weakest in a general election, which I believe polling will show fairly certainly when we get to that point. So that's how I see it playing out. I think Jeff's in this. I think he's got a chance. Yes, he's hated by Republicans, but it doesn't matter. And I've always thought that Jeff's argument that I changed my mind on all these major issues that are issues of principle, and they aren't issues of principle if you change your mind on all of them diametrically, right? I think that's a really strong argument against him. You can't be ardently pro-life and then all of a sudden pro-choice, right? It just doesn't add up. But what unites Democrats is hatred of Trump, and Jeff Duncan is someone who sacrificed his career in Republican politics to fight Trump. And so that is his calling card with Democrats. Here was somebody who was willing to give up everything to be with us on this issue that is so important to us.
Yeah, I just think that argument that he is the only one fighting against Trump, the truth of the matter is, B-Rob, you know what I'm about to say. Everyone else that's running has been fighting Trump. The only difference is that he got ran out of the party. And this is what I've been wanting to say. Two things real quick, Lisa. He also talks about how he's the best person to beat Burt Jones, right? And assuming that Burt would have probably been the nominee. And, and B-Rob, we're going to get into some polling later about, what he's seeing out there. But if you really want to beat Burt Jones, he could have stayed in office and beat him in a primary, right? So I don't think the maths, Lisa. What I'm saying is, why would Democrats nominate a Republican that can't expand the base? The way you win general elections in Georgia is that you got to get your base plus strategy, right? You got to put that base plus strategy there. So in order for him to get the base, he's going to have to go on the attack, and he's going to have to talk real bad about some of these Democratic stakeholders in our community, right? Folks who've been out here for decades serving Democrats. And then he gets into the general, and you just heard me and B-Rob talk about the disdain I think that some of them have for him. They're not going to come over and vote for him. He's not going to be able to get that moderate independent voter. And then the last thing is that, listen, Jeff Duncan, B-Rob just said it. You can't just switch it on that quickly. You've heard me use this analogy, right? You can join the church. The congregation will accept you, right? You can even want to sing in the choir, but you can't start preaching to the congregation next Sunday. Like, people got to know who you are. We got to know where you stand. And I think that's why the money that he raised was, I think, a little disappointing, because he propped himself up as being this guy that can raise the money to go up against Republicans, and he's going to need every cent of that money to build a coalition. So B-Rob is right. I'm not saying you count him out. I'm not saying it's done for him, but you got to be able to make that appeal to people. And that's why I think when you look at Thurmond, and Keisha was out in the state this week too, give her some credit. She was in Millersville, she was in Sparta. But that's why Thurmond was working those areas, over 100 events, Lisa, 96% of his money coming from Georgia people. That is something that I think that cannot be just overshadowed. But how he continues to raise it and how people continue to spend it is going to be so important in building that coalition. And again, we got to wait and see what Estevez is going to do. He has said that he's going to attack Jeff Duncan on his record. He's going to talk about Keisha and her record. He's going to tell Democrats how conservative Jeff Duncan was. He's going to say some things about Keisha. So if that continues to play out, let's also see how those candidates will respond to his attacks too. So I think it's a long way for really being able to crystallize who's going to be in the 1 or 2 spot. And I'm going to say this, B-Rob. I'm going to say this on this podcast. I would not be surprised if Keisha maybe comes in second. I don't think you can concede the number 1 spot just yet, because no negative attacks, no advertisement in a paid direct way has really transpired this year.
Yeah,
that's right. That's a good dividing line there, because I'll go on the record as saying I think it's almost certain she finishes first. So this will be fun.
On the Republican side, Brian, weigh in on the Rick Jackson factor. We talked about that live last week as the news broke, and a few days to sink in. What are Republicans saying? What are they thinking? And especially, what are the candidates feeling?
Well, I do want to say some breaking news for our political breakfast listeners, something that I need to disclose to all of them. This wasn't true on Thursday when we did that live show in the midst of Rick Jackson announcing. But since then, I have been brought on to his campaign to do communications work and advise him. So I want everybody to know that I'm letting you know on the front end that is what's going on. Tharon and I don't play political consultants on radio and TV. We actually have made a living doing this. This is how I pay my mortgage, not doing TV shows and radio shows, right? So this is something that this is how I make my living, and I'm super excited to be involved in it. And I just want to say that on the front end.
So, talk about the factor. What has the response been among the GOP community? Because this was a wow factor, wasn't it?
Anytime somebody's putting in $50 million and kind of coming out of nowhere, and it's kept so locked down secret like this, it is a bit of a shock factor for sure. We haven't seen this level of money being used in a Georgia primary ever in the history of the state. And he immediately became a factor in this race. We had polling from a third party. Actually, it's the governor's pollster who did this. Came out in the news Monday morning that showed Burt Jones at the same level he's been, 22, and Rick Jackson at 16. And this would have been in the field getting respondents basically a day after Rick got into the race. That is a rocket ride of polling. You never see numbers break out like that. So he went from 0 to 16 really in a matter of 24 hours. So you are seeing a lot of folks who want an alternative to Burt Jones turning to Rick Jackson as the most credible option here in that race. Somebody who can run as an outsider, someone who's not going to have a voting record, public office record, which, sort of the same was true of Derek Dooley over in the Senate race. And he's going to occupy that outsider lane by himself and have a lot of money. So I think the fact that Burt had the Trump endorsement and is not in the 30s already, that's a sign that people are open to somebody else in this race. And so it flipped over the Republican primary really immediately.
Well, Tharon, what are your thoughts after Jackson hit the news and said that he was running for governor and put in all this money? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, our listeners know I'm not going to let B-Rob off the hook that easily. It was funny, Lisa, because Tuesday changed the game. Last Tuesday, when Rick Jackson, we all woke up that morning. We woke up to two things. One, the Duncan and Thurmond numbers were released on the Democratic side, so everyone was waiting to see what those were. And then, boom, out of nowhere, this comes on. So you're right. On Thursday, we talked about this. And so over the weekend, and I gave Brian a little bit of a hard time. On Friday, we were together, and he was, he was being a little bit more complimentary of Rick Jackson. And I was like, are you auditioning for this job? But to our listeners, he didn't say anything. I think it was still in the process. But Brian, I said this to you privately. I'll say this to you on the show. I mean, look, I know how much you care about Chris Carr. I know this was a very tough decision for you. I know how much the Attorney General cares about you, and you guys have been through a lot together. So I think that this decision that you made was a hard one. I know it was not easy, but ultimately, like you said, you got to do what you think is best for you and your family, and the times we got to make that hard choice. Now, be that as it may, that $50 million definitely helped, Lisa. I mean, when you see that much money out there, I'm not saying B-Rob did it only for the money, but he definitely know that he's got a candidate who ain't going to be hesitant to spend it. Now, let's get into what I said last Thursday and what I've heard over the weekend. So he comes in, notice what B-Rob said about the polling. And not that I'm questioning this pollster, because you're right, he is the governor's pollster, but I just don't know how a candidate who's never been on the ballot before, Lisa, who has spent his life as his campaign ad serving people in healthcare, has really been a behind-the-scenes advocate, right? Donor. I mean, giving money to almost every Republican in the state, and then gives $1 million to Trump. How he can just be catapulted to, well, I'm here, B-Rob, you said the first spot? I mean, he's now
22 Burt, 16 Rick, and then okay. So I think Ralph is 11 or 12, and then Carr at 7. Yeah.
Yeah. So Carr's at 7, Ralph is at 11, Rick comes in at 16. You're saying?
Yeah.
And now Burt stays at 22. Lisa, the 16 number is interesting to me because he's never been on the ballot before. I mean, Rick Jackson is a pretty common name. And I don't know if the ad buy had enough time to penetrate that quickly when you ask Republican voters. Now, B-Rob knows this. When you get somebody to actually do a poll, whether it's text, phone, to sit there for 18 to 22 minutes, is usually about the average time, that usually is an informed voter. So I'm not saying that the number is off, but it is a little high for Rick Jackson. Now, if you're Burt Jones, now okay, man, I'm in a two-way race, kind of similar to Thurmond and Bottoms. I'm in a two-way race now with this newcomer, and now he can match my money. Because before, Burt has just been having the Trump endorsement and having 10 plus, now B-Rob just reported $19 million at his disposal. But what you saw from the Burt campaign immediately, because we were waiting to see how he was going to respond to this phantom pack or whatever, this group out here has been attacking him, who, by the way, has spent $10 million on him. So for Burt to still be at 22%. And Lisa, I don't know about you, but if somebody spends $10 million on me telling people how bad I am on television, I mean, y'all may want to reconsider the Democratic strategies on this political breakfast, right? Because you're going to be like, some of this got to be true. So for him to be still
Some
like
of this has got to be
22,
true.
I mean, you know, somebody spends $10 million. So to be fair to Burt, he's still standing, Lisa.
Yeah.
I mean, he has been hit in the mouth multiple times.
Yeah.
So he started responding to Rick Jackson right away. So now let's get to the ultimate question. What does Raffensperger do? What does Chris Carr do? Chris Carr just lost, his main man. I'm still French, right? But that's a huge blow to the Carr campaign. What will happen to his staff? What will happen to his donors? Now, if you're Raffensperger, the person who Rick Jackson attacked first was Raffensperger, right? Literally calling him a traitor, going after him pretty aggressively. So Burt Jones had to get on the offense, Lisa. So what I'm about to say is this. It is going to be so much money spent telling the Republican primary voters how loyal they are to Trump. But the question I asked B-Rob and I asked all the Republicans who listen to this show is, what will Trump do? Trump has never been known to go with the person who he'll cut bait. He'll switch. He'll go with the person who he thinks is going to win. And he likes people with money. But Trump is also a person, Lisa, who usually, most times, reward loyalty. And Burt Jones has been a Trump loyalist. But that $1 million that Rick Jackson gave Trump, I'm sure that definitely gets him some calls back. So what will happen with the Trump endorsement? Will Trump stay with Burt? How does Burt respond? And then what does Carr do? Does he stay in the race, right? And I think all signals that I'm hearing that he stays in. Wow. But Raffensperger now has a unique opportunity to enter the mix and could really figure out a way for him to talk about Trump in a different way. Does he talk about Trump in a different way? Does he really get out here and follow some of this polling where we see Republicans are very concerned about Donald Trump and his inability? We can't ignore the fact that he reposted a racist ad depicting the Obama as apes. Republicans in the Senate, in the House, and even some locally did not like that. So how much would his endorsement really matter? And how engaged would he be in this primary?
Brian Robinson is our Republican strategist that checks in weekly. Tharon Johnson is our Democratic strategist who checks in weekly. Nice chat with you guys. Great show. And we'll do it again next week.
It's going to be such a fun 3 months. I can't wait. I love Georgia politics.
Do you concur, Tharon?
And apparently the rich is going to get richer. So congratulations, B-Rob.
Hey, I'm just trying to make a living, bud.
$50 billion. I'm sure it's definitely got that call returned a little quickly. But no, congratulations to you, brother.
Thank you, buddy.
Did either of you see the Rick Jackson ad during the Super Bowl?
I did. It was in the third quarter.
Quickly, sum it up for us.
It was the same as, it was a shortened version of the rollout ad that told his origin story growing up in the projects, growing up in foster care, and then learning the value of work and getting himself out of poverty and building $1 billion business.
There you have it. Money talks. All right. See you next week.
Bye, guys.